Hello, AABA friends and family. And first of all, apologies for the technical difficulties. Are we are running multiple windows here, dealing with multiple things. It was a little bit of a mess, and that is all on me. But we should be running well now. I'm Ezra Dinney. I'm AABA's operations director, and I am not the reason you are here. So we, without further ado, are going to get to the world premiere of our 50th anniversary documentary. We're very excited to share this. People at our gala got a little taste. By the way, spoiler alert, in the house, Dale Minami and Mike Lee will be here taking your questions. That was some great camera work. They will be in here taking your questions after the documentary. So sit back, let me get off screen, and let's watch this together.
The Asian American Bar Association of the Greater Bay Area has been a voice of the San Francisco Bay Area's Asian Pacific American legal community since 1976. AABA fosters professional development, community, and service. We are advocates and allies for civil rights, representation, and equality. Within the AABA statement, we discussed the purpose of AABA is to build a community, professional development, to be advocates and allies of civil rights, equality. And while the mission statement is really important for people who want to get to know AABA or to even remind us what AABA's mission is, I think what's even more important is what we do to back up what we state in our mission statement.
You know, I actually went to a pretty liberal high school in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii, and we were activists. We were at that time anti-war, and there was a lot going on that we did not like, and we spoke up about. So Berkeley seemed to be kind of a good fit for that. Yeah, I worked with Joe Morizumi, who was a trial attorney working in Oakland. And he was quite a bit older than we were. He was a senior attorney. So it was a wonderful experience. And so Dale Minami, Eugene Chimene, and I worked with Joe. But we were interested in doing real cases. And he became available. I forget how we were introduced, but he took us under his wing immediately. And we kind of, we all each had our role in the cases that we filed. I would say we filed about 50 petitions to get people out of the military service because of their concerns about the Vietnam War. And we were successful in all of them except one. Dale, Eugene, and I were the first lawyers. Dale was the first lawyer, and then Eugene and I joined him after we took the bar exam. And we named our group the Asian Law Caucus. And there were a lot of law students that helped out and a lot of practicing lawyers, very experienced and excellent practicing lawyers, like Joe Morizumi, Ken Kawiichi, another very eminent judge. And we got a lot of great experience that way. I was interested in working in San Francisco. And I had a person that I knew running the Chinatown office of the Neighborhood Legal Assistance. And he offered me a job. So I was sad to leave working with Eugene and Dale and Joe and so forth. But we always kept in touch and we always worked on cases together. Well, Dale and I always wanted to build, a foundation of lawyers. And that we would work together and to our mutual benefit and to the community's service. Uh, and there was no such organization in existence. So we checked around. There weren't that many lawyers, but we contacted as many as we could. And people were interested in forming a bar association. So we met. There was a older lawyer in San Francisco Chinatown by the name of Jack Chow, who had a very nice restaurant, the Four Seas restaurant. And it was a great place for us to meet and eat good food and have a nice social event. And so we put as many lawyers as we could together. And I think we're probably about a dozen maybe. Not always that many, but, and formed the Asian American Bar Association. And Jack Chow was the first president. And I was the second. And I was kind of a leg person. I did the organizational stuff, but Dale was he's really the brains of the organization. He had the ideas, the principles, and things, and we just fell in line. What he proposed was eminently reasonable, and he's a born leader. He's always been a born leader.
Mike and I worked together at the Asian Law Caucus. We started it together. And despite his protestations, he's a visionary. And his vision was that beyond the Asian Law Caucus, we had to have an impact on the legal system through the bar associations. So he had moved to San Francisco. It was one of the focal points of organizing at the time. And Mike joined bar associations there. He eventually became the first president of the San Francisco Bar Association, first minority president. But Mike said we need to do something like form a bar organization. And that's where we coincidentally met up with the San Francisco folks. So he'll deny it, but it's his vision. He just has a bad memory. And we wanted to create a large organization that embraced civil rights, but also helped each other succeed either in court where we faced racism, just outright racism. We wanted to get judges appointed, and we wanted to make sure that people knew each other in order to give referrals to each other. I think the combination of the two viewpoints turned out to be quite effective in keeping the old guard, bringing them in as members, and of course the new affirmative action and non-affirmative action Asian Pacific American law students joined as well. So over the years, I continued to do impact cases and represent civil rights cases. And one day we received information about the Korematsu, Hirabayashi, and Yasui cases, which were decided by the Supreme Court in 1943 and 44 that upheld the exclusion of Japanese Americans during World War II. Those are monumental cases. They're taught in every law school. And we discovered through one of our friends that there was evidence that these convictions were upheld by the Supreme Court through fraudulent means, through lying, through suppression, alteration, and destruction of evidence. So 40 years later, we were able to reopen these cases, and we were able to then go to court and try to get the judge to overturn their convictions some 40 years earlier. And we were able to do so because we had not just only a great judge, but we had great facts, smoking guns. And I was allowed to represent Fred as lead counsel along with a great team because the person who found the evidence wanted a Japanese American attorney who did major cases to represent Fred. And there were not a lot of us around at that time. There were not a lot of us, period. So I was able to lead a team with wonderful people to overturn Fred's conviction at a time when the redress movement by Japanese Americans seeking reparations and redress for their unjust imprisonment during World War II was raging in Congress. And the decision by our judge allowed us to go with a declaration to Congress and say a court has found that there was no military necessity, that racism propelled this decision to imprison these people, and that their decision in the Supreme Court was obtained by fraudulent means. AABA became one of the most powerful voices for civil rights in this area, in the state, in the country for that matter. And so we knew that we had allies here, and the emotional support of people who, instead of opposing you like we had folks do in the early days, we knew they were supporting us. A number of people volunteered, and some of them actually became part of the team. Others would give us that emotional, psychological support to keep on. I've always believed that organizations possess more power than individuals alone. And so for AABA, the first Asian American Bar Association in the country, to bring together different ethnic groups, collaborate, and maintain, I think, their North Star, which is to make America live up to its rhetoric of equality and also support other marginalized groups rather than just your own. And I'm so proud of their work in that area, because over the years they've kept that North Star and have done right.
I graduated law school in the mid-'80s, and I was living in Oakland, and I had a great job at a law firm. But one critical element was missing, and that was I felt like I needed a community. I felt like I needed to find where all the other Asian American lawyers were. So I went to an AABA social event, and I remember it was at Yangsing on Stevenson Alley in San Francisco. And I walked down the stairs and saw this room of, gosh, maybe there were 20 lawyers who looked like me. Maybe there's just 10 with lots of mirrors. And I thought, this is great. I feel like I'm home. And you just learn to roll with punches. Now, internally, I have to say my first law firm is no longer in existence. So I can tell the story, and the partner who is the subject of this story, it has passed. But every Pearl Harbor day from the time I was a first-year lawyer, he would knock on my door, say, yes, come on in. And he'd say, Joan, you know what day it is? December, whatever the day is. He said, yeah, today's Pearl Harbor Day. I just want you to know that. Now, when you're a first-year lawyer, that just completely throws you off. Like, am I going to get fired? And in those days, there weren't sexual harassment laws. No one really pursued race discrimination. I didn't know what to do other than feel incredibly insulted and angry and feel like I needed to work harder to prove myself even more. That happened up through the time I became partner. I became partner in 6 years. I brought in one of the biggest clients to the law firm at the time. Nevertheless, he came in and he knocked on my door and he said, I just want to remind you, even though you're a partner, today's still Pearl Harbor Day. So I wanted to create an environment where all Asian lawyers were viewed as equal to anybody. And I wanted to create an environment where people didn't feel like they had to excuse themselves or walk in with a chip on their shoulder, that they had every right to have a seat at the table, they had every right to be the lead trial lawyer, they had every right to be a judge, they had every right to be the primary questioner in a deposition. And that was not even an issue. But in my days, that was an issue. And in my days, you could feel the strict scrutiny of somebody kind of sizing you up based on appearances. It's not like I'm award crazy. Really, I'm not award crazy. In fact, there's a part of it that makes me a little uncomfortable because it feels like you're bragging about yourself, which is very anti-Japanese American. So genetically, I'm adverse to that feeling. But nonetheless, I found myself seeking positions of leadership or being asked to, which I decided to pursue because I wanted our communities to see that an Asian American woman could lead. simple. So I became a president of the Asian American Bar Association of the Greater Bay Area in 2001. I parlayed that to get on the big bar, the Bar Association of San Francisco board, and I was elevated quickly to become a president. So in its then 134th year of existence, I was the first woman of color president. I was awarded the Unity Award by the Minority Bar Association here in the Bay Area. I became a regional governor of the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, NAPABA. I got the NAPABA Trailblazer Award, which is the highest award that organization gives. I was awarded the Spirit of Excellence Award by the American Bar Association, Anti-Defamation League, Thurgood Marshall Award. My pinnacle achievement, I think the award, I call it the Old Ladies Award, sorry, but it was the American Bar Association's Margaret Brent Award. I was really, really pleased because it acknowledged my career work. And even now, I mean, I love mentoring people. I must mentor 10 people a week. People I just have regular calls with just to help out on some sticky situation, or more often than not, to give them an atta girl or an atta guy, just, you can do it. I believe in you. And just having somebody who has been decorated as much as I have, saying, I see you, I see your talent, you're amazing, just get over this hump and go get it. It's just, there's no better feeling other than winning a case than seeing somebody's face light up and realizing that you've just infused them with hope and energy and a path forward.
AABA has allowed me, when I was a member, to take my frustrations at receiving discriminatory treatment and plow it into something positive, like educational efforts about anti-bias work. And I served on that women's committee with Joan Haratani and Jennifer Liu, and we put together some skits about bias in the legal workplace. And the idea was to talk about the kinds of things that women of color encounter that other people may or may not. As president of AABA, we had different keynote speakers, and Justice Joyce Kennard, Associate Justice of the California Supreme Court, was a speaker, and Associate Justice Ming Chin, the two Asian justices on the Supreme Court, were speakers. I think I invited Ming Chin to speak during my year. In any case, he was a registered Republican, and the word was that all Asians being vetted for the bench were going to pass over his desk. In any case, when I got appointed and I saw him at the next AABA dinner, he congratulated me and immediately said, "Do you have anyone to swear you in?" And basically volunteered to swear me in. He was a registered Republican. I was a Democrat. That didn't matter to him. In those days, they were willing to look at a Democrat, and they were willing to evaluate someone on their own terms. And having Ming Chin swear me in was one of the greatest privileges of my life. And political party didn't matter. As a judge, you cannot be an advocate in the sense that a lawyer can be, but I am still extremely vested in the idea of justice as something that can only really be provided if you eliminate, not just minimize, but eliminate bias in all aspects of the legal system, not just from how lawyers represent clients or don't represent clients, but in how the court works. So I have participated in judicial education, and I am currently the first Asian judge to serve as dean of the Judicial College in California, which is a mandatory program that all new bench officers at the state court level must attend during the first 2 years of being a bench officer. And the focus that I have brought to my tenure as dean is in eliminating bias in the delivery of court services to the public. And so I found a natural outlet for that was inspired by the contacts I had through AABA and the work that I was able to do through AABA. AABA propelled me and enabled me to become a judge. And beginning in January of 2027, it will be my privilege to serve as the first Asian presiding judge in Contra Costa County. So AABA has made a huge difference, not just to me, but to dozens, probably hundreds of people participating in the court system in the Asian judiciary. 5 past presidents of AABA have become judges. That would be myself, Judge John Sugiyama, Judge Margaret Fujioka, Judge Victor Huang, and Judge Yumi Lee, who is a federal judge in the Northern District of California, all past presidents of AABA. And that means that if you become a president of AABA, you have a 1 in 10 chance of becoming a judge. But seriously, it's not a requirement because of all the dozens, if not hundreds of people who have become judges without being president of AABA, but it cannot hurt.
I was a young associate, probably 3 or 4 years practicing, and my partner now, Joan Haratani, and mentor, encouraged me to join AABA at a lunch where she was encouraging everyone to become involved in their community. So being a dutiful young associate, I did exactly that. And I remember attending one of my first AABA mentoring events and walking in and thinking, I have never seen so many Asian American lawyers in one place. And it was pretty exciting, inspiring, and a little overwhelming, to be frank. Joan asked me to help Ted Ting the year he was president. And that was the first leadership role that I had with AABA, which was to be education co-chair, education committee co-chair. And I really enjoyed having that active role and being able to design programs for AABA, including the MCLE Mini Marathon, which continues to this day, which I'm very proud of. And it was really through that experience that I eventually decided to run for the board, and then eventually was asked to run to be an officer of the board, which I agreed to do. And people like Joan and Ted Ting and others encouraged me to take on that leadership role. And when I was secretary of AABA was also the year that I decided to create the Pathways to Partnership program, because that was the year after I had just made partner at my firm. It was also the year that I was an officer with AABA, and I realized that there was a real need to provide support and mentorship to our talented senior associates in the AABA community who wanted to make partner at their firm, but may not have all the resources or mentorship available to them in their organization, and AABA could fill that need. And I'm proud to say that we've had 5 classes of the Pathways to Partnership program, and I think we have almost a 50% success rate of participants achieving their career goal of becoming partners at their firms, which is something that is just incredibly inspiring and meaningful to me.
So I don't have anyone in my family who's a lawyer. I didn't grow up around a lot of lawyers. I didn't really maybe understand what a career in the law truly looked like outside of television. So I had been a member of the Asian American Bar Association, but I had not been super active. I did receive the newsletters, and I recall reading one of them, and it mentioned the Pathways to Partnership program. At the time, I was probably a couple of years out from the partnership decision at my firm and had not really understood all that it entailed. I think I had this idea, you just keep working hard and maybe you make partner or maybe you don't. And the Pathways announcement talked about all these other factors to think about, the dynamics at your firm, the politics, how to become a business generator, how to pitch to clients, and thought, oh, this is really interesting stuff and not something I'm learning elsewhere, not something I'm even aware of. And so I really wanted to be a part of it. During COVID times, and I and probably everyone else was feeling very disconnected. We were all remote. And I was just so surprised to be able to have a community that kind of grew around me through this experience. So I was assigned a mentor group. And I remember at the first meeting, everybody in my group had read my materials. They knew who I was. They had thoughts about the resume that I'd submitted and how I could make that even better. The activities and the assignments they had us do, one of them I recall was pitching yourself. If you were at a cocktail party, how would you describe what you do? And everyone was so invested. They listened to my pitch. They gave me amazing feedback. I was just so surprised to have this community of very accomplished lawyers take an interest in me and help me and want me to succeed. And for me, it felt like a community I didn't know that I needed. And once I had it, I was like, this is amazing. After doing the program, I did end up making partner at my firm. And the next year, I really wanted to participate in the program, but not as a mentee, but as a mentor and eventually an organizer of the program. It had been so important to me, and I was really excited to help shape the program and give other people that same opportunity that I had going forward.
I grew up in the Bay Area, and all my life I spent it in a donut shop. My parents had a donut shop for over 40 years. They recently retired 2 years ago. And one of the things I knew early on was I wanted to learn as much as possible. Learning education was really important to me because for my father, who was a Cambodian refugee, his education unfortunately got interrupted when he had to immigrate with his family and find refuge in the States. So when I arrived in college, one of the first things I wanted to focus on was Asian American studies and learning about immigration, how folks arrived, what they've been doing, and the challenges they continue to face. Fortunately, one of the classes I took was Asian American and the law. And that was actually my first exposure to AABA as a sophomore in college. I learned about the organizations, the leaders of the organization, and how they had such a national impact. During my 1L year, I was attending a student club event on campus, and we had a representative from AABA attend and share how, as law students, we can get involved early on. I was pretty set on attending already, but there was a really good selling point, which was we have good food, bring Tupperware. I had never thought about that being the delivering line for a professional organization, but it really worked on me. I was pretty set that I was going to be involved in AABA. I wasn't sure what I was going to do there because I knew everyone would be an attorney already, but I was hoping that if I, poke my head around a little bit, maybe I'll get a mentor or two. And I think I really lucked out because I learned about their mentorship program as well as a law student committee where I got to be able to be involved really early on. So it really exceeded my expectation of being able to be involved professionally while I was continuing my legal education. So one of the events that we put together was boba with the bench. And it is exactly that. We just drank boba and we talked to judges. It was set in our classroom that looked like a courtroom, but for the first time, the judges came off of the very front of the room and sat with all the students. And we kind of were just like very casual. We're asking questions like, did you expect to become a judge? What did your parents think? Did your parents still compare you to other people when you became a judge? Like all these other questions that were just very, very honest and very earnest of like wanting to know how folks were able to kind of build their pathway to where they were. Another milestone that I'm really proud of during my law school years is being a founding member of NACAL, National Association of Cambodian American Lawyers. It was formed in 2024, and we were able to meet and participate in the National Asian American Bar Association conference in Seattle. And I think being in a newly formed affinity group and professional network, it really shows how much AABA has impacted the community, and not only be an anchor in the community, but really in inspiring other folks to continue on and continue building off the foundation that AABA and a lot of the older bar association committees have created. Just knowing that at the end of the day, it's not about what we've just built, but how we can move it forward.
Legacy is never just one thing. It is not. It is a constantly changing idea or belief. That is my opinion. And legacy can be shaped by you and your actions. So you think about, what do you want your legacy to be? I know for myself, being president this year for AABA's 50th, I want my legacy to be a year in which I'm asking our members to celebrate our history, celebrate how far we've come, how we've gotten over 50 API judges appointed on state and federal benches. Think about the clinics, the AABA Law Foundation, all the scholarships we're given for over 30 years now, like everything we've accomplished, and be proud of that, right? But I am also asking you to think about where we're gonna go from here. I'm asking you, if you are in a position that you can do something, to do something different, to volunteer, to speak up, to say, hey, you know what? I'll volunteer for that board. I have ideas, and put yourself out there and create your own legacy. It's really up to us where we want the next 50 years to look like.
Fit everyone in with iPhone 17 Pro. And stay connected with AT&T.
You got this, guys.
Get iPhone 17 Pro on us with iPhone.
There we go. There it was, AABA's 50th anniversary video. I am joined by AABA's founding fathers, Dale Minami, among many others, and Mike Lee. And, you know, one of the first things that I wanted to do, and either one of you can take this, is I talk about AABA's founding fathers a lot. When we started making this video, the documentarian actually said, it's a lot of women. Maybe you should find some men to be involved. And so I wanted to ask both of you, who were sort of AABA's founding mothers? Who were the women that were involved early on?
Okay, well, mostly it was all men at that time. And eventually people came in, Terry Tan, others that supported us. But the group of about, 8 people, Mike? 8 people were all men.
Yeah, and those were all the people that were available.
Yeah.
That had graduated from law school and so forth.
I think the women did not have as much of a presence because they were not allowed to. They were dissuaded from going to law school. So they were just a smaller pool. But Pat Lee worked at Legal Aid. Do you remember her? She's with the Bar Association, but she worked at Legal Aid and she was early on. Lillian Singh was in there for a while, but we kicked her out. No, we didn't. Lillian was not interested. She was pursuing other work like Chinese for affirmative action. And so she had a different priority. But they were there, but less interested in creating an Asian American Bar Association.
Well, in general, the legal profession had a lot more men than women. And then it changed pretty dramatically and nicely.
Yeah, well, and my research assistant here has just pulled up the stat that right now women are the majority in law school. 56% of law school students are female, which is fantastic. We had one there in the video, Emily. So this is the first time you guys have seen the complete video, right?
Yes.
So what do you think, seeing not only sort of the history of AABA, but also kind of the current AABA? Mike, let's start with you. What were, as you're watching it, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking that we have really come a long way, and the right way. I'm proud of what we did, but we just started it, and it's developed and achieved so much without us being involved, based on all of the tremendous talented people that have came after us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really looking forward to the future.
Yeah. I think, not to be too critical, but we're focused a lot here on corporate, big firm kind of jobs. And like Mike and I, we started our own firms. So we're the outliers in a sense. And I think what we need to do is be more inclusive. And that would be, public interest lawyers, that would be public lawyers who are a large part of our group. But nevertheless, I think the kernel or essence of what was said rings very true. And I think it could be applied to some of the other areas of practice as well.
Mm. So in the video, you talk a lot about AABA's sort of starting as a civil rights organization, really. Our roots are as a civil rights organization. How do you see that tradition and those roots still showing up today?
Well, it was actually a big tent. And I think Mike will agree that when we started, we came from the East Bay, and we were public interest lawyers to a great degree. And there were a number of other lawyers in the West Bay who were corporate lawyers. They had their practice, business lawyers. And we figured at the start, we needed to embrace both areas, both civil rights and business development, and have a different, diverse group of lawyers who worked in corporations or corporate law. And I think each side had a great tolerance for each other. And I think we understood we were trying to do something larger than just create a civil rights organization, although that was my perspective. I think others had a slightly different perspective, but we all tolerated and really embraced each other's different perspectives. And AABA still does that today. And I think that's a great thing that they have both areas, or a lot of areas covered. So it's very diverse.
Mm. And Mike, you were AABA's second president. So how did you kind of handle that push and pull?
Well, we were a very limited group at the time, but we were really interested in growing the group and being as inclusive as possible. Mm-hmm. And we weren't trying to weed out people or, get power for ourselves. We really were focused on the organization, and we want everybody to get involved. And we did everything possible to get a diverse and representative group. And go out there and actively recruit people into this organization. And I think AABA still has that outlook.
What did that recruitment look like?
Look like taking people out to meals and recruiting them, telling them about AABA, making it more interesting to different people, showing them that we wanted to be inclusive, mm-hmm. and that AABA had things that offered them advantages in their practices, and also things that they might be interested in. Mm. And it helped to have people who, for example, the first judges that we were backing and so forth. And Dale can speak more to this because he was very involved and successful in recruiting Asian American judges. But that had a profound influence on the growth and the reputation of AABA as well.
And that's something we really want to touch on, Dale. What was the process how did you just kick the door down to try and get more APA representation in the judicial field?
Well, I think the genesis of that for me was that we were not being treated very well in court. And that redounded to the detriment of our clients. I remember judges who were outright racist, would use the N-word, talked about chinks. They would refuse to appoint interpreters for our clients. And it was just outrageous. And so to that extent, we realized that we had to be political. We had to have a strategy. And by dint of luck, we had a Governor Jerry Brown. We had an appointment secretary, Anthony Klein, who became a Court of Appeal justice. And so we had some access. And these are folks we knew, or I knew from public advocates and public interest law. And then the second part of that, I think, or maybe the first, is that Mike got on the Jenny Commission. So Mike was evaluating judges, and then he suggested that I get on, and he forced me on, and I became a member of the Jenny Commission, and that was kind of an eye opener because you understood what it took to become a judge. You still had to understand the politics of power and how judges were selected. And I think and Mike and I talked about this, that because of the way we were treated in a way, we understood that you had to have people of color on the bench. You needed more diversity. And that's a great argument for diversity. And once we started pushing and lobbying for judges, then a complexion and gender of the court changed, but also the sensitivity to cultural issues such as need for an interpreter and other cultural issues became much more, I think, widespread in the judicial branch.
So, Mike, can you just talk a little bit about what's a memory for you from like the forming of AABA?
Well, I'll give you an example. In one of our first cases, with Dale as the attorney of record, Eugene Tumene, Garrick Liu, and myself represented a young Asian American UC student who was swept up and arrested in a peaceful march in Chinatown, protesting the police heavy-handed treatment of San Francisco Chinatown activists and residents. And I remember at the time that San Francisco had only 2 Asian American judges. One of the judges was very welcoming and fair to us. However, the other Asian American judge consistently and publicly went out of his way to make the few Asian American lawyers who appeared in his court feel unwelcome and disrespected. Fortunately, we didn't have that problem in Alameda County, but unfortunately, it was because we didn't have any judges, Asian American judges in Alameda County. However, Asian Americans had a rich history and tradition in scholarship and collective efforts. And for the sake of our clients and our profession, present and future, we quickly understood the power in numbers and collective efforts, which to us included a well-organized, activist, thriving Asian American Bar Association. And a lot of our dreams came true.
If I could add to that.
Yeah.
The start of AABA was kind of interesting because we did have fairly conservative people and, a lot of liberal people. I think affirmative action kicked down the doors to allow a lot of Asian American attorneys to become attorneys. And they were closer to our age than some of the more conservative older folks. And I remember a time when we devised a strategy to elect the first board. They just wanted to nominate themselves. You remember? We'll just name ourselves. We said, no, we have to have election. And Mike and I were just adamant, you must elect. But we allowed them to elect the first president, who was William Jack Chow, more of a conservative type. But we decided that, we would pack the board. And we were able to pack the board with people who were much more civil rights or maybe progressive. But in the second election, we had to do a write-in ballot, which has never been done before or since. And the write-in ballot, we nominated Mike Lee. And Mike, the people we had in our support just overwhelmed the vote. And after that, kind of that culture or that mythology of AABA being a community-oriented service, a big tent, all became part of the cultural traditions of ABBA, and it's been that way since, which is, I'm really proud of that more than anything, that we were able to maintain kind of the perspective that we have to support and be the voice of our community, because our communities didn't have a lot of lawyers then. And we had to stand up, not just for our community, but for other marginalized community. We had a larger perspective, and that has stayed the course, which, with Angel doing that as well, I think is shows you how far we've come after 50 years. We've pretty much kept that culture and mythology of being of service to our community, speaking out for the community and other marginalized communities.
One of the through lines in the film is talking about mentorship, whether it's ABBA's mentorship program, whether it's informal mentorship, which you both have done over and over, whether it's pathways to partnership. So what did mentorship look like at the beginning of ABBA's time, and how have you seen that evolve? Mike, you want to?
Well, we spent a lot of our time assisting people and trying to encourage them and our peers to share their experience, their knowledge, their contacts, and so forth. And I think ABBA has always reflected that approach to life in general, that we are there to help everybody else, and that was going to be a real a real improvement in our profession and our society. And I think that's still that spirit in ABBA. People, I think, have a very positive image in general of ABBA as being inclusive and helpful to them in their lives.
So what were some ways that mentorship was going on that you saw back then?
We didn't have many formal programs. I don't think the word mentorship was even invented 50 years ago. But what I found is people like Joan Haratani came in, and it was a natural mentor, and others like her understood that they had gone through some tough and rough times, and they wanted to smooth it out for others. What I've seen as far as the mentorship is as far as the welcoming of, and that's part of the culture, the welcoming of other non-Chinese, Japanese, Filipinos, which was the start of ABBA. And just the fact that the affiliate organizations, Korean, South Asian, Southeast Asian, even Cambodian, have, the newest one probably, have joined and stayed with ABBA. I thought that was an amazing development, Korean Americans as well, that they would want to stay with this maybe larger organization, and yet they respected ABBA, and ABBA had the same kind of respect for them. But the warmth and the welcoming of new people who come to any ABBA event is maybe one of the hallmarks of the organization.
We just have a few minutes left, and so what I wanted to give you both a chance to do was sort of, the movie ends with Angel, our current president, Angel Garrett, and her call for people to get involved in ABBA and make ABBA what they want it to be. And so what do you see for the future? What is your hope for the future of ABBA, Mike? muted. There we go. I want to thank you for hanging around and for being with us through the technical difficulties. I hope you enjoyed that video as much as we did here in the room. And come to an AABA event. You'll get food. Oh, and in fact, if you want to see more of Dale, on May 28th, AABA will have, Dale and Mike and everybody, Legal Activism 101 will be the start of our legal activism stuff. Dale will be involved later down the line. We'll be having that. It's going to be an in-person event. There will probably be food. Please join us. You can sign up on AABA's website, May 28th. And with that, we are going to leave you, and we will see you next time. I look forward to talking with Dale and Mike again. Thanks, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Critique to say, are we off?